It started with one missing box, a little brown rectangle that should have been on my porch and wasn't. And you notice that when you've just moved into a quiet street and you're still learning its rhythm. I'm Sam Archer, 36, 2 jobs, a mortgage that finally made sense. And when another package vanished, I thought, okay, driver mistake. Then a pattern began to feel personal. We live in Willow Hollow, neat lawns, identical mailboxes, people who treat rules like a religion. The HOA runs the show, and Evelyn Hart ran the HOA. She's the sort of person who wears order like perfume. Impeccable, a clipped tone, and a way of saying community standards that makes it sound like scripture. People were polite to her, and polite is the easiest way to avoid trouble until trouble knocks on your door. I put up a door camera because the easy option is to be practical. For a while it was boring delivery trucks, kids on bikes, Mrs. Chen's cat stealing a sock. Then one rainy evening a shadow crossed the porch, and someone in a trench coat slipped a box under an umbrella. The footage was grainy, but the angle caught a flash of a name badge on a blazer. I felt sick. I showed it to the police. They were sympathetic but said they needed more. I brought it up at the next HOA meeting. Evelyn smiled, all sunshine on glass, and steered the room into package placement safety. Classic move, redirect with civility. Afterward, she filed a complaint against me, calling my questions harassment. It was her way of turning process into armor. Quiet neighbors started dropping hints in hushed tones. I saw Evelyn near my porch. I found a box with her handwriting. They were afraid. Fear has a sound. It's soft and steady, and it keeps people from saying the thing that matters. We decided to gather more than feelings. Carmen, who teaches in town and has patience built like a bridge, helped collect stories. Victor, who collects lawn gnomes and tells the blunt truth, set up an extra camera. We staged a decoy package that looked valuable, recorded from multiple angles, and rigged motion sensors. Not to make a scene, but to make facts. On a damp Tuesday, Evelyn arrived, precise as clockwork, clipboard in hand. She picked up the box with the practiced calm of someone who does small, routine raids in the name of duty. Carmen called out across the street, not to accuse, just a question, and Evelyn froze, the moment captured on our cameras. She set the box in her trunk like it belonged to her routine and drove away. We had footage and witnesses. For the first time, the neighborhood held something that looked like proof. Instead of apologizing, Evelyn accused us of staging a hostile environment. She doubled down on enforcement. The wrong size flower pot, a flag hung a degree off, a trash can move to half step too far, petty citations meant to remind everyone who had the power. Notices about fines started showing up. For a while it felt like the air in Willow Hollow was thinner, like someone had turned up the pressure in a sealed room. A community assembly was called Community Decorum, and the folding chairs filled. Evelyn stood at the podium with slides and receipts, and she narrated her version of things with the calm of the practiced. "We must protect our standards," she said. Carmen didn't shout. She read stories. An unfair fine sent to a widow, a punitive notice that hurt a single mother, a string of petty penalties that piled up for one person while others were left alone. She read the emails, the hand-delivered letters, the fine notices that arrived like small, precise blows. Evelyn tried to pull the meeting into procedural quicksand, citing bylaws, invoking precedent, but the room had seen the footage. People began to tell their own stories, not loud or dramatic, just the ordinary harms that add up. Being forced to choose between fixing a roof and paying a fine, small public shames, the sting of targeted enforcement. Those stories stacked until governance looked less like stewardship and more like personal governance. There was a moment where Evelyn's composure cracked, not with a dramatic scene, but with a brittle anger that sounded like a script being ripped. She accused Carmen of slander, tried to weaponize procedure again. But the board had to listen. Paper trails are stubborn things. They reveal patterns if you give them time and attention. The board took a vote. It was close. People are complicated and loyalty is a two-headed animal. But enough people spoke up and the tally pushed through. Evelyn stepped down from the presidency. There was no triumphant music, no dramatic arrest, just ballots folded, papers signed, a person leaving a role she had played too long. The feeling afterward was quiet, like a street after rain. The world seemed cleaner, but also slightly wounded. Change wasn't instant. Willow Hollow adopted term limits for board positions, published meeting minutes, and created an appeals process for fines. Those are dull bureaucratic things, but they matter. Carmen organized a volunteer day. Neighbors painted fences and swapped tools and lemon bars. People apologized awkwardly. Some defended Evelyn, saying she'd kept property values steady. The conversation moved from whispers across hedges to porch talks over coffee. The neighborhood didn't magically heal, but it became something we could talk about again. I should say a word about Evelyn not because I excuse her, but because people are layered. She genuinely believed order was the point, and she'd convinced herself that strictness preserved value. That conviction made her hard to reach. What made Willow Hollow change was not one dramatic blow, but a dozen small acts of patience and courage. Carmen collecting stories, Victor refusing to shrug, Mrs. Klein stepping forward, neighbors showing up with documents and calm voices. For me, the episode changed how I see ownership. Owning a house isn't just paying a mortgage. It's showing up for the small civic things that make a place livable. It's recording the facts, talking to neighbors, being willing to stand in a room where everyone watches you and say what you know. Systems can protect people, or they can protect people in power, and the difference usually shows up in how rules are applied. So what would you do in Willow Hollow? Would you gather footage, collect emails, stand up at a meeting? Or would you keep your head down and hope someone else sorts it out? Tell us your neighborhood story, the petty rules that stung, the small injustices, how things were fixed or how they weren't. If this resonated, share it with a neighbor who needs a little courage. If you want more stories about ordinary people standing up to quiet power, subscribe, and if you think we handled it wrong, say so. Community works better when everyone gets to argue about what better actually means.